Okay, sir. I'm audible. Okay, sir. So let us start discussing about web applications and different hosting platforms. So whenever you try to create web applications, so generally every day we use a lot of applications. Generally, what are the options that are available to host them? Okay, right. First of all, what is a web application? So web applications are hosted on World Wide Web, and they respond to requests from browsers. So you take any application, something like Book My Show. So what is it you're trying to do? You're trying to basically create a request, and this request generates a HTML page, and that HTML page is basically drawn on your browser. So for example, ideally what is happening in the background is, this is happening. In the background, what it does is whenever you send a request to this, a HTML page is generated. Okay. And this HTML page is basically drawn on your any of the software, and that software is something which we call as browser. So now this is a typical website. Okay, right. Now to make, okay, so for example, let us assume that this is the first stuff. Initially, most of the web applications were only this. Okay, you access from browser, they respond, and then user interacts with them. So you will have browser like Chrome. Okay, and then from Chrome you send requests, and generally whenever you send requests, what you do is you access it by domain name, https:// something like bookmyshow.com. Okay, right. So now whenever you send this request, internally what happens is there is an interesting stuff that happens, which is called as a DNS server. Okay, so whenever you send these kind of names, a request will be sent to DNS server, and DNS server will respond back with IP addresses. Okay, it will respond back with IP addresses. Okay, I'm quite sure that every day you're accessing directdevops.blog. So you access directdevops.blog, which is one more web application, and you are getting a HTML page which looks like this. So first, directdevops.blog, whenever you're accessing, on which server is it running? For that, so if you go to nslookup.io and then type directdevops.blog, sorry, getting two IP addresses. So this request will be sent to the DNS server, and this DNS server responds back with an IP address. And your browser now will send an IP address or a request to that server. Is it making sense, sir? This is the first step. You take any application. Okay. So there is a HTTP yes part. Yes part we will discuss when we discuss Kubernetes. Okay. So right now I'm not speaking about a security aspect of HTTP protocol. But are we clear on this first part? Okay. So this is called as name resolution. Okay. So whenever you try to buy a domain, you will get name servers in which you will be basically hosting. Whenever you type this, where should it go? Right. Now let us assume that this server's IP address is this Prastaniki for our understanding. Okay. Now on this server, you generally have a software. This software is something which we call as web server. The reason why it is called as web server is because it can respond to web requests. It can respond to the web requests. And on this, your designers will design your website. Okay. This is a basic workflow. Okay. Right, sir. Are we clear on this so far? Yeah. You access any website in the world, this is the same story. Okay. Now, then when we go to the cloud or when we are learning cloud, we'll understand that whether one web server is enough. No, one web server might not be enough. You might have multiple web servers. We will introduce load balancers. All of that, that is something we shall discuss there. But actually, this is happening. Okay. Right. Now, then what has happened was basically we got one more interface, which is mobile. So on the mobile, if I'm basically accessing the server from the browser, the story remains same. But we use apps. Okay. So if you're using basically browser-based mobile applications, then probably what I need to do is I need to send a different HTML page which fits this mobile's resolution. Earlier, this was the case. Most of the times, whenever you access facebook.com, it goes to m.facebook.com and you get basically web pages which are suited for your device-based applications. But that was not very much easy to use or not user-friendly and all that stuff. And then over here, what has started was people have started building something called as mobile. Generally, mobile apps are not something which expect HTML pages. They don't expect HTML pages. So how to solve this problem? So for this, what has happened was there were two problems. Web applications initially were only expected to serve HTML content. Okay. Initially, HTML content was static. Okay. So for example, if you go to this, let me go to this Wayback Machine and let me try to show you Microsoft.com. So this is how Microsoft application is looking right. So we have sign in into your account. You have different options and all of that stuff. So let me go to this Wayback Machine. And then let me tell that I'm interested in Microsoft.com. Okay. So come on. Right. Are you seeing over the years, how did Microsoft's website look like? This website basically has an archive of it. So let me go to 1999. And let me click on 3rd February 1999. How did Microsoft's website look like? Are there any interactions or is it only news? Home, events, trainings, downloads. You click on anything, it would basically open some other page. Okay, it is all like static content. Okay, so it is like a newspaper. That was the earlier web. But over the periods, what has happened is things have started changing. So people wanted dynamic websites. Okay. If you can go to this Wayback and try to look into any website of your choice. You can see Google from day one. You can see many websites from day one. How did they appear? So now if you try to see when we come to 2017, the things have changed. So we had to sign in. You can buy items from here. So your web has become dynamic in nature. And to support this dynamic, we need programming languages help. If it was only static website, right? So that is, it was enough to create static pages. Okay. So the technology stack was mostly HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay. So now the other thing which used to happen over here is ASP, okay, and JavaScript. ASP was the technology from Microsoft, which was called as active server pages. Okay. But slowly they started fading because the need of static content has slowly done. So now then, web applications were supposed to be interactive, handling business logics such as ticket booking, okay, online transfers, right? So when we wanted to do that, then the earlier technologies cannot handle this. So then the application servers started evolving. The basic idea of application server is application server can run business logic. Okay. So for example, in Java technologies, I'm quite sure that you might have heard about J2EE. Okay. And then servlets, JSPs. Okay. Java server pages. Okay. And right now we basically speak about something called as Spring MVC. These kind of stuffs. Okay. So if you try to look into the .NET world, we had something called as ASP.NET. And then ASP.NET has a classic version and a core version now. Okay. So in the world of Ruby, so we had something called as Ruby on Rails. So we had PHP. So then Python also was trying to do this, and the framework which can do this is Django. So if you want to build websites which are dynamic in nature, I can use any of this stack. And slowly during this period, people have started creating something called as Node.js. Generally, JavaScript was a client-side technology. They have designed this JavaScript to run on server side also. That platform is something which we call as Node.js. So Node.js basically uses your Google Chrome's engine. Okay, that is how it parses or understands JavaScript. It is called as V8. Me Google Chrome lo V8 and engine untadu. That basically understands JavaScript. Now in Node.js also they use the same thing. Okay, fine. This was the technology stack. Okay. Now till this point, what is that we can do? We can build something like these kind of applications. Okay. Right. Then now what has happened is then separation of web and business logic was the next step. So in this, for building web is basically supposed to serve HTML. Okay. So web layer generates HTML. App layer, it is responsible for business logic. So then in the earlier days, we used to use something called as jQuery, and that is integrated with ASP.NET and JSP.NET and all of that stuff. But then what has started is people have started building something like, okay, Now I'll not do the same thing. What I'll try to do is I'll try to have a web store. Okay. Now this is a web layer. Then I'll have application. And my application might be storing the data in some database. This is how they have started separating it. And in between, you might have multiple stuff. This is something which we call as entire application or a 3-tier application. This is classic 3-tier, but you can have many tiers inside. Now over here, to build this web store, okay, people have started using, okay, vanilla JavaScript. Vanilla JavaScript means plain JavaScript, whatever is released. Vanilla ante వాళ్ళు ఏది ఇచ్చారో అది కల్తీ లేదని, right? Fine. So then later on, the basic idea of single page application started evolving, and then the first framework which was popular in this was AngularJS. Okay, and then came React, and then Vue.js. Okay, so this is how the modern stack is being developed on the web front. So what this does is it basically will draw HTML pages, and whenever it has to take any decisions, it speaks with application. Okay, now application will try to speak with databases or other backend layers. Now if you try to go to Chrome and your mobile phone, so basically what happens is Chrome speaks with your web store, but mobile app indirectly speaks with your application. And this is exposed with the help of something which is called as REST APIs. Even here there are multiple stuffs. Initially we used to have something called as HTTP APIs, then something called as REST APIs happened, then GraphQL came into play. Now we have gRPC. Okay, so there is an evolution in that world also, but REST is most widely used option, so I'm trying to use REST API for that. Now advantage of REST API is any platform can try to speak with your app server. Yeah, then you might ask, how about security? Yeah, security and everything is addressed, just like how anyone can access your web application, but only who have access will be able to buy or sell tickets, right? So in the same way, in the web application also the story remains same. Am I clear on this? Right? Yeah. Okay, so now this is the first use case. Right, sir. So earlier to this, it was straightforward. It was always about mobile apps అయినా పర్లేదు, మొబైల్ యాప్ తీసి క్రోమ్ ని మొబైల్లో పడేద్దాం. So when you are accessing your website, the DNS story still remains the same, but what has changed is how we basically host our applications. Okay, sir. Okay. All right. Now then, what has started happening over here is I have a huge banking application, and I'm trying to run all of that on one. So, okay, sir. Let us assume that this is a e-commerce application. Okay. Now, in this e-commerce application, what I want to do is whenever user finishes the order, I need to send an email. I need to send an email. So then some of the companies have started doing this. So if you want to send an email, I'll give you REST APIs for that. So that you need not send emails. All you need to do is send a request to me. I will try to send you the email. Okay. So you will have REST APIs for email. You will have REST APIs for sending SMSs. Okay. In the same way, I'll have REST API for Facebook post, LinkedIn post. So whatever I want to do, when one server wants to speak with other server, they expose the functionality over APIs. Okay. So now your application speaking with this is something which we refer as integration. Okay. So my component speaking with some external component or some other component, this is something which we call as integration. So this started happening. And this is something which you do almost every day. So for example, I'm not sure how many of you have seen this, but generally, whenever you try to get into any LMS platform or anything, once you have done all of that, it might ask you saying that, give me your LinkedIn credentials so that whenever you achieve something, I'll post it on LinkedIn. Okay. So how is that happening? It is happening because your application knows how to speak with LinkedIn with the help of these APIs. Are we clear on this? Yeah. This was the first stage. And then what they said is, okay, why should I run all of my application on one server? Because it becomes very difficult for me to scale. When number of users are increasing, what is happening is I'm increasing number of servers. And if there is only one application where everything is running, let us assume that I have changed 2 lines of code. But what is it I need to do whenever I give a new version? I have to bring this whole server down and then deploy the application again. Okay. So for to handle these kind of challenges, what they said is, okay, let me not do this. What I'll try to do is, I'll try to take one application and then break it down into multiple services. Now it is no longer one application. It is, your application is broken down into multiple services. Okay. Right. So oka code kaakunda, it is broken down into multiple parts. Now the advantage is when there is a need, I can individually scale services. So for example, if there is a big app sale day happening, my order service will be busy, my catalog service will be busy, not all of Amazon. Okay. So I can individually scale this. So this is the first advantage. And the second advantage is I can reuse these services across applications. So for example, if you try to take an Amazon sign-in application, or if you try to create an Amazon account, you use the same account for across different Amazon applications, right? The reason for that is the identity service is shared across different applications. You can basically better reuse this. So this is something which we call as microservices. And later on, this got broken down into something called as nano services to reduce the cost further. ప్రస్తుతానికి microservices దగ్గర ఆపేద్దాం. Once we start basically writing serverless functionality, then we will try to understand what serverless is. There we are trying to speak about much smaller services. The basic idea of this microservices, this microservice should be a business problem or a business domain. And if you don't like the technology, you should be able to rewrite the whole code in other technology in very less time. That's a basic goal. So for example, I have written a microservice application in Java. I didn't like that. Now I want to write it in Python. So it should be very easy for an organization to scrap that Java part and try to rewrite the whole application. Okay. Now the best part of these services is each of the service can be in a different technology. But whenever you are trying to do this, you have to decide a technology and whole of your application will be only one, either Java or Python or .NET or Node.js. I cannot have different technologies. Now, if I do this, I can try to choose what is better for developing this service. So, for example, identity service is good in Golang. Let us assume that that is what it is. So I can try to write that in that. Okay, because this REST API basically, okay, still uses, or REST API uses HTTP protocol, which has nothing to do with programming languages. Every language understands HTTP. Okay, so it is not necessary that your technologies have to be same. But if you follow this model, your technology will be same. Are we clear on this evolution, sir? Yeah. So now I'm basically not writing this. Okay, then to individually scale. Okay, and for easier deployments without having downtimes, microservices were introduced. Am I clear on this, sir? Yeah. Now let us try to look at the idea of hosting platforms. So how can I host the stuff? So for example, if I'm trying to speak about, okay, web server or application server, whatever you call it. So the first option which these basically have is, okay, one is take a physical server, install some operating system into it, and then on that operating system try to install your web server or application software. Okay, then deploy your code. This is the first case. Next, then people have started using something called as virtual servers. So since physical servers are kind of costlier, and then your organization, what it does is it takes one physical server and creates multiple virtual machines. And in those virtual machines, you can basically deploy. So generally in on-premises, we have something called as VMware, but you can try to create virtual servers in AWS or Azure or GCP, or even something called as VMware, which is used in on-premises. So yesterday, for the people, I think you might have shown the Linux server creation, right? So you might have created a Linux server and logged in into the Linux server. So that's how we created. And after that, we install servers and then use our application. Okay. So then with cloud coming into popularity, then what has happened is there is something that has started, which is called as platform as a service. Or this is something which is called as PaaS platform. Now, forget about physical server where you need to do everything. Let us assume that I am trying to create a virtual server on AWS. So that means that I am not dealing with physical hardware. I am not dealing with physical networking, but I still deal with operating system, right? Now, if operating system basically changes, so for example, a new update is given by Linux, it is my responsibility to update. Okay, right? So if Python gets a new update, it is my responsibility to update it. So I'm again still doing too many things. So this layer is something which we basically call as infrastructure as a service. But if you go to the platform as a service, what cloud platforms try to tell is you have code which you have written in Python. I will directly give you Python. On top of that, deploy your application so that you need not manage underlying operating system updates, Python updates. You are only responsible for your code. So this is what platform as a service is. And almost all the cloud platforms basically support PaaS. Okay, right. Then if you try to take it to the next level, what I can try to do is I can try to run this in containers. So we will be trying to learn something called as Docker and Kubernetes. Okay, so you can basically make your application run inside containers. So these are your options. Okay, so deploying Python web apps or APIs. Okay, and now if you take it to the next level, then there is one more option which is called as to deploy web APIs. We can use serverless in addition to all of the above. Okay. There are some other external platforms like Heroku and all of that stuff, but the concept is same. They are PaaS services. Okay. Now to run, or once you have developed a web application to deploy, you have many options. From starting from physical server, virtual machine, PaaS platforms, containers, and then serverless. Okay. The advantage of serverless, okay, even in containers, some of the clouds are giving you that option. Generally, let us assume that I am having a virtual server. AWS charges me, let us assume, 1 rupee per hour. Let us assume on a rough note for easier calculations. Now, my website is used only for 10 hours in a day, or 10 hours in a month. Okay. నెల మొత్తంలో 10 గంటలే వాడుతున్నారు దాన్ని. Okay. But should I run my server for 10 hours or for all the time in the month? All the time in the month, because you never know when those 10 hours are. But serverless is such a technology where what happens is only when your code is executing, then you will be charged. Otherwise, there are no charges. That is the advantage of serverless. That is a modern era of developing applications. But there you cannot try to build huge applications. You need to write smaller stuffs. So there we will be trying to have something called as functions as a service. We'll be using that one also. But the whole part is, once I am developing an application, this is a broader spectrum of what are the options which I have. So are we clear on this, sir? So one is virtual machine. Virtual machine and chakri and physical item mottam mande. Right? So there is one, let me try to see if I can find it. IaaS versus there is okay, containers. Let me not bring into picture because I might not find it. Okay, ఏదో ఒకటి సామాను ఉంది మనకి, రైట్. ఇలా గీతలు గీతే సరిపోదు. Okay, sir. So if you are trying to run your application on a physical server, on-site is physical server. Who manages physical network? Your organization. Who manages storage? Your organization. Who manages servers? You. Virtualization? You. Operating system? You. Middleware? You. Data, runtime, all of the things are managed by you. Now you go with infra as a service, that is virtual machines. If you go with virtual machines, networking handled by AWS or Azure or GCP. Physical networking. Physical storage, their problem. Physical servers, their problem. How do they do virtualization? That is their problem. Our responsibility starts from operating system. ఈ బొమ్మలోనే తప్పు ఉంది సార్. ఈ పైన పేర్లు this is PaaS and this is FaaS. అరే బాబోయ్, మళ్ళీ దీనికి కాపీ రైట్ ఏడిచిందంట. వద్దులేండి, మంచో చెడో ఇంక ఇదే వాడుకుందాం. Right. At least in this there are less stuffs. Okay. Right. The basic idea, or this is also not accurate, sir. Problem ఏంటంటే బొమ్మలన్నీ ప్లాట్ఫామ్ as a service. ఈడన్నా కరెక్ట్గా ఇచ్చొచ్చాడా? ఓకే, this looks okay. Right. Now I'll be trying to use this. Managed by the cloud provider. Cloud provider is nothing but AWS or Azure or GCP, whatever cloud which you are trying to use. So if it is on-premise, whatever is in yellow color is something which you are managing. Whatever is in this gray color is something which cloud provider is managing. So you go to PaaS platform. So what you get is you directly get a runtime. Runtime is nothing but Python. You will try to tell that I want 3.111 version of Python. Okay. So you manage from this point, you are not managing operating system. So whenever Linux gives a new update, it is not your problem. It is Microsoft's problem. If you are using Azure, if it is Google's problem when you are using GCP, if it is Amazon's problem if you are using AWS. Now, if you go with function as a service, you have less headaches. So basically what you are trying to deal with is function is basically whatever code which you are trying to write. So your function and you are responsible for your application. Rest of the things you are basically not trying to do. SaaS ఏదో బాగుంది కదండి అసలు ఏది లేదుగా పని అనుకోవచ్చు. SaaS అంటే మనం పని చేయట్లేదు వేరే వాడి దగ్గర కొనుక్కుంటున్నాం. So SaaS basically means that I am, for example, I want an e-commerce application. One thing which I can do is I can write the code, manage the code on my own. So, or if you go to Google and then try to tell that e-commerce SaaS. Okay. So top 5 e-commerce platforms. So if you try to go to the SaaS platforms, what they will try to tell is, okay, for example, Dynamics, Salesforce. Okay, Shopify. So what Shopify does is, you want to run an e-commerce business. So don't worry about software. Software we will handle. You just pay us bills. And they manage all of your e-commerce software. Okay. You need not worry about software. What they will try to give is, they will give you one login and then you can basically start working on it. Okay. So for example, in the same way, I want to start a college. Okay. Something like a school or a college. And then I want a whole software to manage my school. One way of doing that is get the software developed. Do it on your own. Okay. Or go to something like Merito. Are using educational CRM. So what I can do is I can basically go over here. They will basically give me all of this. I have to, each of my employee will get a login and they start working on this. So this is, what is this? This is a SaaS platform. Okay. So for example, మీ దగ్గర పాలు ఉన్నాయి, మీరు కూడా మల్లారెడ్డిలాగా అమ్ముకుందాం అనుకుంటున్నారు, right? So then there is no need for you to think of how to develop that mobile app and all of that. So there are a lot of SaaS platforms where what you need to do is you need to basically go there and pay your monthly bills. Then they will run the software for you. That is SaaS. So SaaS సుఖంగా ఉంటే మీకు పని కూడా ఉండదు. So that's the reason SaaS means finished products, where you are trying to buy accounts and then do the stuff. Okay, right, sir? Now, are we clear on this, sir? So once you develop your application, there are different ways of hosting. Okay, right, sir? So let us start basically looking into this. All I want you to do is, okay, just Google for this or go to Perplexity. Okay, how to post a use Perplexity, right? How to do Facebook post, that is fine, from Python. And how to, ఈ భాష మీకు అర్థమవుతుంది కాబట్టి ఇదే అంటున్నాడు, ట్విట్టర్ పోస్ట్ అనకూడదేమో. ఓకే, హౌ టు రిమూవ్ అన్ని ఫేస్బుక్ మెటా ఎందుకు, ఇంకోటి ఏదో చేద్దాం. ఓకే, how to get the top 10 contributors. of a GitHub repository from Python. How to send SMS using SendGrid from Python. Dilesh, let us not worry about all of these things, sir. First నేను చెప్పింది చేయండి, ఓకేనా? మెల్లంగా ఏపీ అంటే ఏంటి వెళ్దాం. నేను ఏపీ అంటే ఏంటి ఏం చెప్పలేదు కదా ఇంకాని. డిడ్ ఐ స్పోక్ అబౌట్ ఏపీఐ? రైట్. కొత్తలో ఇలాగే ఉంటుంది. రైట్, ఫైన్, డూ దిస్. Try to, I am not asking you to write that code. I am asking you to search that code and try to see the steps. Okay, then we will try to discuss about what I am trying to get into. Okay. Google for this. So how to do Facebook post using Python. So what it says, you need to create a developer account, get the token, and then what is he trying to tell? Install requests. And then what is he saying, trying to tell? Send a HTTP request, and then you should be able to do a post. Okay. Then what is the next thing? How to get top 10 contributors. So again, if you try to see, install request library and then send a request to some URL, and that URL will try to tell you whether you are basically what do you call who are the top 10 contributors of it. Okay, right. So can you give me equivalent curl? Sorry, saying. So whatever is done from Python code, I can send it from command line also. Okay. So let us try to understand REST APIs. Okay. Right. So first of all, how does HTTP work? I'm quite sure that we know HTTP, right? Telusane anukuntunnan nenu. Yeah. Right. So basically what we try to do, we try to send a request to the server over the HTTP and it responds us back. Okay, right. Now, okay, right. HTTP is a popular protocol which responds to client requests serving content. Even though majorly HTTP till now we have spoken in the form of what you call HTML pages, you can use HTTP for any file format. That is the reason why your YouTube streaming is working. That is the reason why you are able to download softwares from HTTP by clicking on some URL and it gets downloaded to your machine. So HTTP can serve any content for that matter. Okay, right. So now when one server wants to speak with other server, the basic idea was, this is something which we call a service. One function, one server trying to give you something so that you can use it. So for this, earlier we used to have different APIs. Okay. So for example, in the earlier days, we used to have something called as RPC, remote procedural calls. That was very difficult to manage. Then came something called as SOAP. SOAP is object-oriented, not object-oriented. It is simple object access protocol, and that was majorly around XML. But for that, you had to have a special client which understands SOAP. Okay. Then they said that HTTP is something which everyone understands. Okay. And I'm quite sure we all know about JSON. So what they have started doing is, why don't we try to expose our functionality of our application over REST APIs and majorly in JSON format. Okay. So now HTTP basically what it does is, a client sends a request and client waits for a certain period of time. That time is something which we call as timeout. Okay. Within the timeout time, if you get a response, your browser will be showing it. Otherwise, you will get an error saying that your request has been timed out. Okay. So when your servers are busy, generally you will see this message saying that your request has been timed out, because you have sent the request. Server might or might not have finished the request, but your browser waits for a certain time and then it closes the connection. That is basically what HTTP is. Now, HTTP majorly works on the basis of methods. Okay. And HTTP will have status codes which will try to tell what would happen, what has happened to your request. So if you try to look at HTTP methods, okay, right. I'll try to see if there is any image which I can find. Okay. Idi banda. Right, sir. So are you saying HTTP has something called as get method? Okay, get method will try to get the content. Put method will try to basically update the content. Post method will try to create some content. Patch method will try to do partial modification. Okay, and then we have some of these other methods. You have delete method also. Yeah, right. So generally for HTTP, what we have is we have these kind of methods. మనకు అన్ని అవసరంలో సేఫ్ ఇవన్నీ తర్వాత విషయం. Right. So these are the methods. Okay. Now let us just try to play around with one website. Okay. Okay. So let me again go to Book My Show, and then I'll try to open F12. If you click on F12, you will get a network view. Okay. This network view will try to tell underlyingly what is happening. Okay. Let me try to clear network log, and then let me try to click on enter. Okay, there are a lot of content that is coming in play, and are you seeing there is a request which we have sent, and for that request we got a response. And generally for every response, what you get is you get status codes. So what is the status code which you got? 304. Now let me try to do direct DevOps.blog, or let me go over here. Fine, sir. So if I go to direct DevOps.blog, what is the status which I got? Okay, and what was my request? Get. Okay, so I was trying to give me all the information which here. Okay, for example, if you are logging in, you just type your username and password, then post request will go. So depending on your activities on your browsers, internally what is happening, it is basically sending requests and then it is getting responses. So just like in HTML, how we have get method is to get the values. Put is for updating the values. Post is for creating, right? Patch is for partially updating. So for example, you have all of your information and you want to only change your Aadhaar ID. So I'm not changing the whole stuff. Then I'll try to use something called as patch. The rest of the things, delete is straight away, delete the stuff. Rest of the things are basically for debugging purposes. So what is the trace? What are the options which you have and all that stuff. Okay, right. And then whenever you try to send any request, so what you get in the response is you get response codes. So let me try to look into it. Okay. Generally, if you try to look into response code is a 3-digit number. Okay. If there is any response which starts with 1, that means it is giving you information. 2, success. 3, redirection. But 1, 2, 3 are generally success messages. And then if you try to look at 4 is a client-side error because you have made something wrong. So probably you are asking for a URL which does not exist. Okay, then you might see, so you might have seen something like 401 not found. Yeah, or sorry, 404 not found. Okay, and sometimes when you try to access 401 not authorized. Yeah, so each of these are status codes, and each of that status code has some meaning. And then 4 series are the mistakes that are made by the client, and 5 series are something that is to do with the servers. If you are getting 5 series, that means that there is some code that is not working correctly on the server side. So whenever you send any status code, whenever you send any request, what is it we'll get? We'll get a status code. And from status code, we can figure out whether the things are working correctly or not. Okay. So this is something which is called as status code. Am I clear on this, sir? So every HTTP protocol, what it has methods and it has status codes. Okay. Fine then. Let me try to show you something. Let me go back to this. Clear. And then let me try to access direct DevOps.blog/ admin. Oh, admin on the valid anukunta. Fine. Slash simple website తీసుకుంటే better. Okay. Baboy. Right. Slash super admin. So if you try to see what is the error which I got, what does it mean? You are asking for a URL which does not exist on the server. That is the reason it is giving me a status code of 404. Similarly, when I ask something, if server fails, I get something in 5 series. Okay. So these are the basic stuffs. If you want to see the whole list of status codes, okay, ఇక్కడ చూసాను మీకు మొత్తం అన్ని చూడాలని సరదాగా ఉంటే రైట్ 400 bad request, 401 not authorized, 403 forbidden, 404 not found, 200, right? If you try to see, you will basically try to see the stuffs. All HTTP response. So if you try to see 100, continue, 101 switching protocols, 102, 103, 200, 201, 202, you will basically try to see all the status codes in this machine. Make sense? Okay. Now, when my API or when my code wants to speak with other server code, when my mobile wants to speak with my app, when my web wants to speak with my app, so then they decided that let us try to use this inbuilt HTTP because it already has intelligence to it. Okay, and then they have created a practice or a style that is called as REST. REST stands for representational state transfer. REST stands for representational state transfer. So what do we mean by that REST and how can we use that REST is something which we'll be discussing post break. Let us try to take a break for 10 minutes, come back, and let us try to understand REST, and then let us try to create one REST API today and also use a REST API. Okay, what create చేద్దాం రెండోదేమో we will try to use an existing REST API because you should know both. Okay, you should know how to use a REST API from Python code and also how to create one. So using is something which you will be doing in DevOps often. Creating is something which you might not be doing in DevOps so often, but still we need to know both of them. Okay, right. So what's the tool that is using to see network flows? And there is no tool, sir. You go to any browser and then click on F12. F12 is developer tools on any browser. So just click on any browser and try to type F12 key. You will see this view. Okay. Right, sir. So let us take a break. Okay. Okay, sir. Now let me try to basically give you an article so that you can read this. What is REST API? I think not this. Okay, I'll give this. Refer here for REST API. Okay, sir. So what we will try to do is we will try to understand some more additional things which you need to understand about REST APIs. So whenever you are trying to speak about REST APIs, okay, REST APIs use HTTP for communications. So that is, they have status codes and HTTP methods, because these two are something which you have seen just now. There was status code like a 3-digit number, 1 series for information, 2 series for success, 3 for redirection, 4 for client side errors, 5 for server side errors, right? And in addition to that, we had methods: get for getting the information, post for creating the information, and put for updating the information, patch for partial updates, options to see what are the APIs that are supported or what are the methods that are supported. You have all of that which you can implement. Now, the other concept around REST APIs are REST API is an architectural style, okay, which introduces the concept of resources. Okay, it introduces the concept of resources. Okay, now and then this represents an object, or for easier things you can think of nouns in your application, whatever you're trying to build. Okay, and they can be accessed using URI. URI stands for Uniform Resource Identifier. Okay, right, sir. Now, what I'll try to do is let me do this activity. Let us assume that I want to create a REST API for some scenario which we want to do. Let me try to do that. 1 minute. I have one REST API which I've created, so I'll try to copy that. Okay. నేను తీసాను కాసేపు అది పట్టుకొని నుంచో. Okay, sir. So in the meantime, let us assume that I am trying to create a REST API for a library. In library, what are the nouns which you can think of? REST API లో ఏమేమి ఉంటాయి లైబ్రరీ గురించి ఆలోచిస్తే? ఏముండవా? What are the nouns which you can think of in terms of REST API in libraries? లైబ్రరీలో ఏముంటాయి సార్? పచ్చళ్ళగా. What are the things which you can think in terms of library? You will have book and right, sir. So I have couple of library sample REST API design and okay, fine, sir. Let us try to have a look at it. So if you try to look at library, resource is noun. So in the library you might have books. So and then you would have authors, and then whoever is borrowing, and then basically the transaction, that is borrow or return books. Okay, and then if you want, you can basically have categories of your books. What category does it belong to? Okay, now what it tries to tell is for every noun that is book, try to have methods. So give me the list of books. Then we will try to send a get request to an endpoint. Endpoint is where you will basically get these books. So slash books. Then you will get all the books. If you want to get a specific book, okay, your server's name slash books slash ID. Okay. Now if you want to add a new book, you will try to go over here, and then you will be basically posting a request saying that I want to add a book, and the book will contain the following information. The book will contain the following information. And then if you want to update the book, and if you want to delete the book, the same thing goes with other aspects also. Okay. Facebook created a resource called as a post. Facebook has created a resource called as post. You wanted to create a post. That's the reason why, if you remember, when you were looking into this, it was a post request. Okay. Where is it? Request dot post. Okay. Now in the same way, you want to get the top 10 contributors. So if you try to look into it, the final request which you have sent is get. And this is the URL or URI, Uniform Resource Identifier. So this is where you basically get the resource. In this APIs, we have authentication also, but in whatever APIs which we will try to simply create, we will not have any authentication at this moment. Okay. So now, generally, whenever you try to think of just like how we have done the object design in object-oriented programming, in the REST also there is a certain style, and that is what I've tried to mention. I've taken two examples. One was departmental store. Okay, so in departmental store, you have products, you have categories, you have customers, you have orders, you have payments, you have cart, and then you have Inventory. Inventory is a whole list of what are the items that are available in your shop or not. And similarly, I've tried to create a library example. Okay. So it doesn't matter what you're trying to build. Basically, you can create APIs like this. Okay. And now this API has become a business now. Right. So you might every day, whenever Uber you are trying to track, or in Zepto or in Swiggy, whenever you are trying to track your order, you will see a map, Google Map. So how is Google getting revenue out of it? Whenever they make a API request, they have to call. So WhatsApp Business API, when Quality Thought wants to send a WhatsApp messages to the students who are using a blue tick or green tick, okay, so then for using that APIs I have to pay. So you can create commercial APIs which generate revenues to your organization. Okay, that's how most of the, or even ChatGPT is a API based billing stuff. So whenever you're using ChatGPT, మనం free వాడతాం. But actually, if you want to use it for an enterprise world, you will be paying for using those APIs. Okay. So now if you take it to the next level, then comes the rate limiting features, API gateway and all that stuff. But the whole idea is this is how we build APIs. Okay. So shall we build one API? Yeah. So what I'll try to do is I want to build an API. So developing REST APIs. The best part of REST API is you can develop in any language. Since our focus is in Python. Okay. To develop REST APIs in Python, we have following frameworks which make it simple. The first framework which makes it simple is something which is called as Flask. So if you use this Python's framework, building API applications is extremely simple. Okay. And then we have something called as Django RESTful. So then we have Tornado, we have Starlet, there are many other things, but Fast API. So to build Python web applications, these three are the most popular libraries. Okay, even so-called machine learning models are exposed to the outside world using either Flask or Fast API these days. These are very popular. So what we will be trying to do is, let's use Fast API to build APIs. Or REST API and API, they are used as synonyms these days. Okay. So now, why should I consider using Fast APIs? First thing is it is modern. Okay. So generally, whenever you have fast REST APIs, trying to look at a documentation like this is a difficult part all the time. Okay. So whenever you are trying to look at Fast API features, Fast APIs are support asynchronous executions. They are not synchronous. Okay. So can you just Google what is difference between synchronous and asynchronous in Fast API? Asynchronous and synchronous in Perplexity. And kindly tell me the meaning. నాకు తెలియదు, మీరే చెప్పాలి. Pardon me? Synchronous happens immediately. Please try to use Fast API. Use Perplexity and try to correct your definition. What is difference between synchronous and asynchronous? Okay. Okay. That gives a wrong impression of asynchronous. Okay, if it is asynchronous, yeah, the best idea of asynchronous is like if your mobile app is not, for example, you said that pay to Google Pay. Till the payment is done, it is not allowing you to do anything else in Google Pay. That is something which is called as synchronous. But if you try to tell that I am doing the payment in the background, if you wanted to send one more Google Pay, you can continue doing that. That is asynchronous in nature. Okay, asynchronous basically means that there is no need for you to strictly wait. Okay, so your program basically executes. Okay, I would say I should not be using a term called as parallelly, but concurrently is what I can basically tell. So whenever you are trying to write a server is never for one user. Server is for multiple users. And whenever you are trying to use it for multiple users, your server will not stop basically executing on one front. It will basically try to have a asynchronous executions. Okay. So Fast API supports asynchronous executions or asynchronous APIs. And it supports automatic API documentation. Generally, in other languages, if you want to create an API documentation, you have to write extra code for this. In Fast API, there is no need for you to write any extra code. When you are writing the code, it generates API documentation, which makes it extremely testable. Okay. So otherwise, so API documentations. When I speak of API documentations, there are two popular formats over here. One is something which is called as Open API, not Open AI. Open API, which is basically supported by Swagger. And then there is something called as Redoc. Okay. So whenever you are trying to basically build any REST API, Fast API automatically generates this. So that you can basically try to look into what are the APIs which you have built with this documentation. Am I clear on this, sir? Yeah. Right. And generally, Python web applications are hosted on WSGI interface. Okay. But Fast API uses ASGI, asynchronous server gateway interface. So by default, it supports asynchronous because of this, using something called as Starlet. Okay. So Fast APIs are generally hosted on UVCon, which is an ASGI. So ASGI model basically means that when you want to run your application servers, so you need some server which is running your application, right? Which will take requests and all that stuff. By default, Fast API uses something called as UVCon, which supports asynchronous by default. When you take Django or Flask, we are using WSGI interfaces. WSGI interfaces basically are synchronous in nature. Okay. So now the response times of Fast API are basically very fast. That's the reason why it uses a term called as Fast API. And పేరులోనే fast అని వాడాలంటే ఎంత ధైర్యం ఉండాలి? Then how did they use it? Because if they call it as fast and if it is slow, these days no community will accept that. And these are all open source code bases. Okay. Right. And Fast API has basically gained traction very quickly. Okay. Now, let me also show you this synchronous versus asynchronous API GIF. Let me try to see. ఇదేమైనా పని చేద్దా? సింక్రనస్ లో ఉన్న దరిద్రం ఇది. So while this get articles is done, you cannot make any other request. But over here I can send two get article requests and both of them will be executing. And whenever they finish, they will respond me back. So you need not basically try to wait till the things are done. You can basically try to have async. If you are interested, you can basically try to Google on what is async and await. What is async and await? Okay. Right. Fine, sir. So that's the reason why we are trying to use fast API. So what we'll try to do is, let us first try to write our first fast API application. Okay. And what I want to build is, I want to build a calculator initially. And then we will try to go back to our library and we will try to build that. So now create a new folder and add a virtual environment in it. Okay. So Python get ignore. 1 minute, sir. Okay. Don't worry about this. This is for me to ignore some files when I'm writing that code. Okay. So let me get into cd dot dot. Make their APS cd APS. Okay. Okay, fine. It's అంతగా కావాలంటే తర్వాత చూద్దాం. Right. Now make their calculator. Okay. cd calculator. And then let me try to create a new environment. So Python -m venv dot venv. And in the meantime, cd c drive Python August 24 APIs and calculator. Okay, so virtual environment is created. Now let me try to activate the virtual environment venv scripts and activate. Okay. Now the best place to understand fast API is fast API's documentation itself. I generally prefer using organizational's official documentations because they give you the basic idea, right? So now over here, if you try to look into it, okay, so how to basically deal with the fast API and all of that stuff. Okay, but still, let me go over here. Refer here. Okay, sir. Now the first thing which I need to do is I need to install pip install fast API. And whenever you are trying to install fast API, generally use standard. Basically, there is something called as full also. Okay. Fast API of standard. What is the real need of fast API? Don't we, Visual Studio Code is not enough. Sir, Visual Studio Code is an editor, right? That will help you only in writing code. Even for writing code, we are now going to use Visual Studio Code. But how will we run our web interfaces? Who will respond to our requests? We need some framework for doing that. Fast API is a web framework which will help us in building REST APIs. Okay. Right, sir. And then I'll be trying to install something called as UVcorn. So UVcorn, if you remember, is a server which will run our fast API code. Okay, it says already it is satisfied. Now all you need to do is pip freeze and then requirements.txt. Now let me open Visual Studio Code to write the fast API code. Okay. The first thing which I want to basically do over here is select the Python interpreter. So I'm selecting the interpreter. Okay, it has already selected this interpreter. Fine. Okay. Now over here, let me try to create something called as main.py. You can create any file.py, it doesn't matter. Okay. This module will expose the REST APIs. Okay. Now, since Fast API is a library, there is a lot of code that is written in it. We need to follow some conventions. Okay. So what are those conventions? If you try to look into this example, he will try to give it. So first thing which you need to do is you need to create an app object. So that is your application object. So from Fast API, import Fast API. And then let me try to write my app is equals to Fast API of. And over here, what you can do is, if you try to basically look into this Fast API object, obviously we can do this. So over here, I can basically try to give different informations for it. So what is the title of your application? What is the summary? What is the description? You can pass what is the version. You can do lots of things, but I'm not doing anything. I'll just try to create this. Am I clear on this, sir? Okay. Now the next thing which you need to do is you need to create APIs. Remember when I spoke about generator, I said that there is one thing called as decorator that comes into play. Decorator is an additional functionality which you can add. So let me try to tell that define home. This is a basic function. And then I am trying to tell that return, okay, messages home. Any problem with this? Yeah. Now what I'll try to tell is I'll try to tell that @app. So whenever user calls the slash with a get request, then use this method to generate the response. Am I clear on this, sir? అంటే ఎప్పుడైనా get request చేస్తే దీన్ని రెస్పాండ్ చేయమంటున్నాం. We will change that, but first let us try to run that. So to run this application, what you need to do is, if you scroll down a little bit, it will try to tell that you can basically try to execute Fast API dev main.py. Okay, let me try to execute the same stuff. Fast API dev main.py. So right now, what is it trying to tell? I am serving a documentation at 8000 port by default. If you want, you can change that. How to change that? You can Google it out. But the point is, it gives API documentation @ /docs. Sorry, we got the API doc. Man, direct documentation dala. This generate data in various languages. Yeah, you will not get an automatic documentation. Fast API by default gives you automatic documentation. Okay, and the best part of this documentation is you can try your APIs from here. Are you saying try it out? So whenever I send a request and execute it, it is trying to tell that you got a message as home. And what is the response code? 200. Am I clear on this, sir? Okay. Or not only that. So HTTP:// right now it is running on my system. So I'll be using localhost : 8000 / okay, /docs / because you have said / did you got message home? Yeah. Now this is one way of running it, but what is the fun of running if you can't debug? Okay, I don't want this setup. Whenever you are developing locally, I want you to debug the application. So what you can do is go into your Visual Studio Code, run, and then are you saying add configuration? Just click on add configuration and select a Python debugger. When you select a Python debugger, it will ask what is that you want to do. So what is that we are trying to run over here? Fast API. Select Fast API. So it is trying to tell that in main application. So main module, there is a stuff which you have written, which is called as app. Now there is no need for you to run that UVcorn or fast API dev. What you can do is you can basically try to run F5 now. Okay, and then let me try to go to main.api and put a breakpoint over here. Okay, let me go over here and then let me try to ask all this. Did it hit the breakpoint, sir? Yeah, and now I am generating a response which is called as this. If you try to see, this is the response which I got. Now you go over here and click on try it out. It doesn't matter. We get a breakpoint. Are we clear on this? Yes. Okay. Does it make sense? Was it very much difficult to build this API? But let us try to make it little bit more functional. Okay. First decorator get executed or in function home little confusing. Why is it little confusing? I'm not understanding, sir, because the point is I said that whenever you make a request to the slash, this function should be called. That is the hooking part. So you're trying to tell that this function will get executed whenever the user hits your URL slash with a get request. Am I clear on this? Yeah. Right. Now let me stop debugging. Okay, but let us try to go to build a calculator. So what is that we want to do in calculator? I want to add numbers, right? So now when you want to add numbers, you have to define particular structure to it. You have to define a particular structure to it. So basically there are two ways of defining or passing values to HTTP request. Okay, so when we are dealing with REST APIs, the values can be passed to server. Okay, in the following ways. The first is in the URL itself. In the URL itself, I'm passing the value. So the best example for that is if you try to look into it, he's trying to see inventory slash product ID. So that is a value which I'm passing in the inventory. And the next thing which you can try to do is message body. So if you try to look into this, okay, so what is he trying to do? He is trying to send a JSON request. As part of the JSON request, he is basically sending the body, or as part of this body, he is basically sending a values to it. And the third one is, okay, something which is called as query string. So I'm not sure how many of you know query string, but let me try to see. Let me try to go with, okay. Amazon ki veldam. Ikkada dorikate query string. So for example, let me try to click on cell. Sorry, seeing, let us try to look at this URL. Okay. Manaki మొత్తం దాంతో పని లేదు, ప్రస్తుతానికి ఈ HTTPS speak ఎత్తున్నా. Okay. So till this point, it is straightforward resource. And after that, are you seeing question mark? So whenever you try to see after question mark, node is one value. Okay. ID is one value and references one value. So he is passing three different informations. So he is trying to tell me the node ID, and he is trying to tell me that it is some T3 desktop, and these are the three values which you are passing. Question mark tarvata em kanmana danni query string antam. Okay, right. So we will basically have a query string, and then finally we can use HTTP headers. HTTP headers is not to make a decent choices, but for example, if you want to send a basic information, okay, so key value pair kind of information, these are the four things. So one is you can pass the information as part of URL itself. The second one is you can pass the information as message body. The third one is query string. The fourth one is header. We are not discussing headers at this moment, but you can Google it out to pull the information from headers. So now the thing which I want to do is, I want to implement something which looks like this. Def, at the rate app dot get, okay, slash add slash value underscore 1 slash value underscore 2. Okay. Now def add of value underscore 1 is of type int and value underscore 2 is of type int. And then let me try to tell return value 1 plus. ఏమైనా కష్టంగా ఉంది ఇది? So what is it I have said? I have written some strange expression which is called as value 1. And the second, I have basically tried to do something like this. Is this a very good idea? No, it is not a good idea. You shouldn't be doing this. But still, we are trying to just understand. Let me try to debug my application. Let us try to see if it works or not. Okay. Now let me go to documentation and let me try to type slash docs. So are you saying add value 1 and value 2, and it is trying to tell that value 1 is integer. Okay, and then click on try it out. So let me try to type 10 here and let me try to type 20 over here, and then let me try to execute. So it hits a breakpoint. We know that 10 plus 20 is not a very difficult thing. You get 30 as a response. And how do you send this request? To call this method, all you need to do is http://localhost:8000. దాని తర్వాత మనం ఏమన్నాం add తర్వాత 1 2. So 1 becomes value 1 and 2 becomes value 2. Okay. Now it hits the breakpoint, and if you try to see in value 1, you will try to see 1, and value 2 you try to see 2, and then you get the response which is 3. Rala. So I'm trying to give a calculator over REST API. Now, not only that, the other advantage of this is curl http://localhost:8000. This is the URL of my server. And after that, I'm trying to add 10 and 100. కొద్దిసేపు breakpoint చేద్దాం సార్, యాడ్ కూడా breakpoint ఎందుకు? So did you got 110? And now if you want to see the whole information of what is happening here, you can use curl -i. So it is trying to tell that you are basically trying to send this method. Okay. 1 minute, not I. Right? Small I. So what is the response which I got? 200. And basically, if I try to do this, now let me try to show you error scenarios. So let me try to put 10.1. So what is the error which I got? 422. You are supposed to pass an integer, but you have passed the float. Nene handling chain also. I got an error code. So for example, I try to pass A and 100. So again, you got into parsing error. Is the error handling done? Yes. Who is doing all of that? That framework is basically doing all of that. I am basically trying to tell the types. Does it make sense, sir? Yes. And generally, whenever I am testing this application, I need not do command line. I can basically try it out over here. I can try it out over. Are we clear on the second part? Passing the parameters as path parameters. URL lone unte danni path parameters antam. Okay. Right. Now, at the rate, okay, let me try to stop debugging. So app.get. Okay. And then let me try to tell that I want to do subtract. But this time I don't want to follow this approach. I want it to be a little bit better than this. So what I try to do is, let me basically go over here. And then there is one interesting library which is called as Pydantic. From here, I'll try to import something called as base model. And then let me try to define class, okay, calculator request, okay, right, which is derived from base model class. And in this, what I'll try to do is I'll try to pass value 1 is of type int, value 2 is of type int. Ayipenda? Right. So now let me try to create one more thing. Class calculator response, which is again derived from base model. Here I'll be trying to do value 1 is of type int, value 2 is of type int, and result is also of type int. Any problem here? Okay, right. Now what I'll try to tell is, okay, response model is equals to calculator response. Am I clear on this, sir? So define subtract of, okay, request. Request is of type calculator request. Now what I'll try to do is return calculator response. Okay, or let me try to build a response object. Response is equals to calculator response. Okay, and while you are trying to create calculator response, value 1 is equals to request నుండి వస్తుంది మనకి request dot value 1 అంతేనా? value 1 కదా మనం రాసింది. యా, right. And value 2 is equals to request dot value 2, and then result is equals to request dot value 1 minus request dot value 2, and then I'm trying to tell return response. Any difficulty? So what I've said is I have a request of this type and this is my response type. Okay, let me try to debug this. ఏంటి దీని బాధ ఏంటి? ఇన్వాలిడ్ సింటాక్స్ ఎందుకు అలాగా? లేదు. ఓకే ఫైన్, తప్పు అయితే అదే తిడతలేండి, దానికి ఎంత అవసరం. Okay, sir. Now let me go to the docs again. Let us try to see what are these docs trying to tell now. Now it tries to tell that you have a method called as subtract, and in subtract you have a body. So what is your body? Value 1. And what is the response which you will get? Value 1, value 2, and result. ఇందాక మనం ఎక్కడో ఇక్కడ చూసినప్పుడు ఇలాగే ఉందా? So whenever you are trying to send a request, you need to where is that? Facebook. Okay, Facebook కాదు, GitHub కి వెళ్దాం. Okay, so they are I'm not sure where did we try that. Okay, but generally in the request you will have certain structure to be sent. Now here I have a structure. What is that structure? Value 1, value 2, and result. Now all I'll try to do is I'll try it out. My value 1 is 100, my value 2 is 90, and let me try to execute. So it tries to tell that, okay, failed to execute window. ఎందుకు అలాగా? So let me put a breakpoint. Okay, subtract, try it out. Value 1 is 10, value 2 is 5, and then let me click on execute. Okay, it is trying to that get method cannot have, right, that's true. Get method la general ga body undadu. I need to change it to post. Okay, right. Now let me try to debug this. Yeah. The reason why I'm basically trying to do this is in the future you have difficult object structures to identify. For example, if I want to take an API which will basically take your other information. In other, you will not have one information. You will not be having name and all. You will have a whole body which you need to process. So in that cases, we'll be trying to take message bodies. Okay. Now let me try to refresh this. Are you seeing post? And then let me try to try it out. And then let me try to tell that I am sending 100 and I want to get separated by 20. Execute. Ochina. And let me try to build the response of it. So did I got 120 and 80? Yes. Okay, because generally in actual applications we will have message bodies to deal with, not by basically passing URLs. Okay, మన calculator subtraction కి addition కి ఇది సరిపోద్ది, ఎందుకంటే పెద్ద పొడిసే పనులు ఏం చేయం, right? So for example, now if I want to build a simple interest calculators, how many parameters will have? Principal, time, rate of interest. So then it is better for me to use a message body rather than path parameters. Okay, right? And then finally query strings. So query strings I am not doing. Let me try to see query string. Generally we use query string to try to tell how many results we want. Do you want to send any optional information? So fast API. So are you saying he is basically trying to tell that read items, and then are you saying skip integer? So whenever you want to call, you can basically call skip equal to 0 and limit equal to 0. If you don't pass also, it's fine. If you pass, it will try to do additional results. For example, I'll try to get items. Okay, I've written a method which is called as, okay, let me try to do this. For example, I'll not write any code. So for example, get underscore items, and over here I'll try to basically put limit. By default the limit is, you will be getting only 10 items. So at the rate app dot get of slash items and okay, నేను దీనిలో ఏ కోడ్ రాయను for now, or let me try to return an empty array. Okay, right? So now if you want, you can try to tell that this limit will be of type integer, and this method is going to return list of int. So this is something which we call as type hinting, if you remember. Okay, right? And problem enti saripad em awesome. Now let me try to basically go over here. Fine, sir. Let me go to this documentation again. Slash docs. Here run avleda. Oh, పనోడు పందిరి అయితే పిచ్చిలు వచ్చి పడేసినాయి. List square bracket of int. Yeah. All right, sir. Now if you try to look into get items, while I'm getting an item, I can try to set the limit. By default it is 10 items. If I want to get 5 items, I can add. ఇలాంటి వాటికి query strings వాడు. So for these kind of things we will use query strings. Am I clear on this, sir? Yeah, do we understand basic path parsing now? Yes. Okay, right. So first thing is I'll try to basically share this example. Okay. Now I think you can implement divide, subtract, and remainder also from this. Use whatever is whatever you like. So ilage kavalanunte def multiply, def reminder, and then try to take it in this way. Or if you want to use request and response models, you can do this. This anyway doesn't make sense at this moment, but when we add books, right? So if I want to get all books, and if I want to implement pagination, so first time request పంపించినప్పుడు 10 బుక్లు కావాలి, తర్వాత నెక్స్ట్ పేజ్ లో ఇంకో 10. So you can implement all of that paginations and all of that stuff with the help of those query strings. Okay, right? So let me go over here, get status. మళ్ళీ ఎంత చెత్త ఎందుకు ఉంది ఇందులో, ఆగండి ఒకసారి, వద్దులేండి. get add dot get status. I'm interested only in this. Yeah, VS Code launch.json main requirements.py. Yeah, good. Get commit -m added changes get push. Right, sir? So is it simple to build an API? Yes, this is simple because you have chosen a framework which is kind of makes it simpler. For hello REST API. Now let us go back to this documentation, sir, and now let us try to build something concrete. Okay, so first let us try to build at least a books API. Book API లో ఏమేమి ఉన్నాయో మెథడ్లు చూద్దాం, ఆగండి. So okay, now library REST API. Is there anyone in the class who knows React.js or AngularJS? అవకాశం లేదంటారా, పగటికల్లు అంటారా ఇవన్నీ? Okay, so if you know React and JS, React or AngularJS, what you can do is you can try to write a website which basically speaks with this APIs and you create UI elements there. Okay, web store is written in React or Angular. So what it will do, it will try to speak with your APIs, trying to tell give me books. So that is get all books. It will hit your fast API, and fast API will return the response, and according to that response the UI elements are built. So that is how Book My Show is working. So whenever you try to basically hit, okay, Book My Show and then click on movies, so what is happening, this sends a request to the backend API. That API will try to tell you that movies in Hyderabad, this is a whole list of it. దీన్ని అందంగా అరేంజ్ చేసే పని రియాక్ట్ చేసేది. Arranging this in this decent form is basically done by your React or Angular or Vue.js. But in reality, what is happening in the background? It is all an API. So what API gives is, API gives a movie. It will try to give number of stars. It will try to give this images link also, where this image is present. And then it will try to tell you the sensor information and what are the languages that are basically present. And now React.js takes that and it arranges in this grid form so that you and me can like this page, or you and me can interact with this page. Are we clear on this, sir? Yes. Okay, now let us try to basically build a libraries REST API. Okay, and in library, out of all of the things, what I want to start with is, I want to start with simple book ఒక్కదాంతోనే మొదలెడదాం. Okay, all right, so okay, right, let's try implementing books resource. Okay, sir, now let us try to see what is that he wants. He want a books resource, so get /books, then he should get all the books. So where are these books information? Ideally, where they should be stored? In the database. But till now, we don't know how to deal with databases. But that's fine. So whenever you try to tell books, I need to give you books. Whenever you create a book with a specific ID, then I should give you that specific book's information. Okay? But ఇక్కడ కనబడుతుంది ఏమైనా వేరేగా ఉందా? Get all movies. Get a specific movie with ID. Yeah? Right? So now add a new book, update the book and delete the book. Shall we implement this? Yes? Okay. Now for that, what I'll do is cd dot dot and let me try to create make their library. Okay. So this time I'll be a little bit more organized rather than what I've done in the last time. వద్దండి వాళ్ళకి ఆపేద్దాం ఇక్కడికి అలసిపోయినట్టున్నారు బాగానే రైట్ మీకు ఈ పాఠం విలువ తెలుస్తుందండి రేపు పొద్దున్న ఇలాంటి రావని ఉద్యోగాలను తీసిన రోజున నేను గుర్తుకొస్తాను మీకు రైట్ సో పైథాన్ -m venv and dot venv. కొంచెం ఓపిక పట్టండి మేడం అయిపోద్ది 10 నిమిషాలు నేను రావటమే కరెక్ట్గా మిలిటరీ టైంకి వస్తాను కదా టైం అంటే టైంకి గడియారానికి నేను రావటమే 40 నిమిషాలు లేటు మళ్ళీ దాంట్లో మీరు 20 నిమిషాలు ముందు ఆపమంటే అసలు ఎలా వచ్చేది రైట్ ఓకే అంటే ఇందులో మీ తప్పేం లేదు నా క్రమశిక్షణ అది రైట్ సో లెట్ మీ బేసికలీ ట్రై టు ఇన్స్టాల్ ద నెసెసరీ లైబ్రరీస్. సో వాట్ ఆర్ ద నెసెసరీ లైబ్రరీస్ విచ్ యూ నీడ్? pip install fast API of standard. ఎవ్రీ టైమ్ ఇన్స్టాల్ చేయాలి కొత్త ప్రాజెక్ట్ క్రియేట్ చేసిన ప్రతిసారి ఇన్స్టాల్ చేయాల్సిందే. If I'm working in the same project, it is one-time job because for me, I have created a library folder. Now I'm trying to create I've created a calculator API. Now I'm trying to create a library API. Both are two different projects. So I'm creating a virtual environment. Now pip freeze requirements.txt. And now let me try to open Visual Studio Code. Okay, sir. So this time, what I'll basically try to do is, let me try to create a folder called as API. Okay, right. And in API, let me try to create something called as modals.py. Okay, let us try to look into this. Okay, Control Shift P. Okay, I think I can open this in browser. Let me keep this open in browser, because I need some stuff to be done. Okay, so what is the book structure, sir? I'll be trying to send this, but when I return back, I need to give an ID also. I need to give an ID also. Prastaniki ide book structure anukundam. Okay, so what I'll try to do is, this module will have API models of the library. Okay, now I am trying to create something called as from Pydantic import base model. This is always standard. Now let me try to create class book request, which is derived from base model. Okay, so there is no need for you to create any arguments over here, but at least try to tell that this represents a request of book. Now, whenever you are trying to send request of book, what is that you are trying to basically send me? You are trying to ask me for, you are trying to send title, author, ISBN, and published date. So let me try to go with title. So what is the type of title? str. And then what is the next thing? Author. Author is also of type str. And then ISBN. ISBN is unique books number, which is also a string. And then published date. So published date, what I can do is I can basically try to do this from date type, import date. Okay, and then let me try to use date over here. Okay, right, sir. Now over here, generally whenever you are trying to define modals, Python fast API field. So whenever you are trying to create this, it is a better idea to give fields. It will try to add more description more description to whatever you are trying to pass. So over here, what I can try to do is I can try to tell that this is equivalent to field. But where will I get this field from? From Pydantic, wherever you got base model, you will also get something called as field. So this field will basically give you more documentation. So 3 dots means that it is a mandatory field. So this is something which you need to pass. And over here, what you can try to tell is you can try to give description. So this is book title. And over here, you can also give example. So what is a okay? Let me try to use a book which is usable for you. Dopamine detox. Okay. Now this is the book which you will try to write. And is there anything else which I need to pass over here? Let me try to have a look at it. Okay, description. If you want to give default values, you can give a default value to this field. Okay. So దీన్ని default చేద్దామా? Follow example చేద్దాం default అయ్యింది. If you want to give default, you can basically give default. Okay, now field. I want other information also to be mandatory. Now example is equals to ఆ పుస్తకం రాసిన అతను మహానుభావుడు. Right. Fine then. Now let me basically try to give ISBN is equals to. If you want to make it optional, you can try to tell that off. None. It is not necessary. Okay. ప్రస్తుతానికి రెండిటికి నేను రాయను, మిగతా రెండిటికి రాస్తాను, చూద్దాం ఏమవుతుంది. Let us try to look into what is the difference when you write this and don't write this. Okay. So description is equals to author. Fine, sir. So whenever I'm trying to create a class of book response, let me try to create a base model. So this represents the response. Okay, sir. Now what I'll try to do is I'll try to write something like okay, rest of the things are same, but in addition to this, all of these books will have a unique ID, so which is str, which is also a mandatory field, and description is equals to ID, example is equals to book underscore one, something like this. Any problem so far, sir? So right now it is trying to tell that this is taking too many lines. You should not write anything which is more than 100 column size. So if that is the case, okay, ఇంత పెద్ద పుస్తకం పేరిస్తే మరి అలాగే. Okay, fine then. Right, and let me try to do the same thing for field. Okay. Does it make sense? Okay, now this is my model. This app is developed in local or cloud? No, sir. ఈ శుద్ర పూజలు చేస్తున్నాను. రైట్, అసలు క్లౌడ్ ఎక్కడ వచ్చింది సార్? నేను కోడ్ నా విజువల్ స్టూడియో కోడ్లో రాస్తున్నా. యా, ఫైన్ సార్. So base model is something compulsory whenever you want to make it as a message body request or a message response request. Okay, fine sir. Are we clear on this? Yeah. Now what is it I need to do? I need to create main.py and okay, this is main module. So over here, what is it I need to do? From fast API import fast API app is equals to fast API of. Now let me try to write app.get. So what is that request which we wanted? On the browser we had that page. So slash books. So I'll try to tell that slash books. So whenever you send this, what is the response model? Response model is list of. Okay, so now if you remember, we have written API, and in API we had models, and inside this models I have created book response and book request. So list of book response. Okay, and define get all books. Okay, now all I have to do is okay, so responses is equals to this. Now responses dot append. Mana dummy response create cheyadam. Ideally you should write code for this, but let me try to generate a dummy response. So what is the dummy response? I want to basically try to add new book response of, and in book response what is that I need to pass? I need to pass ID. ID is equals to 1001, and then new awesome, sorry, book response ID title. So title is dopamine detox. Okay, and what is that? Other ఆయన పేరు ఏదో తీసుకున్నాగా, కోడ్లోనే ఎడుతులేండి, ఆగండి ఒక్క నిమిషం. So if I go over here, this is what it is. And then what is that other thing which we want? ISBN. ISBN నేను ఎతక తెలుసుకోలేదు, గూగుల్ నెతి సరిపోద్ది, కానీ ప్రజెంట్ 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 ఏదో ఇద్దాం. అండ్ publish date. So so let me go to perplexity.ai, get current date in Python. Okay, date dot today. సరిపోయిందా? ప్రజెంట్ ఇవాళ ఇప్పటికి ఇది రాసేద్దాం. సో ఫ్రమ్ date time import date dot okay date time import date dot today కదా, మరి ఎందుకు వచ్చేస్తలేదు ఇది? సరే, okay fine, let me try to put a comma around it. Okay, right sir. And the problem is you forgot a comma. Yeah, right sir. And then present I'll try to return only one book. So return responses. Okay sir. Okay, now let me try to basically create the post request. So create underscore book. Okay, right. Now over here we need to add more logic to this, but for today if you are able to do at least 2 requests, that is more than enough. App dot post slash books and response model is book response. And what does it take? It takes a request which is of type book request. Now return. Okay, I need to create a book response of, okay, what is it? I need to create ID, right? So let me try to give ID is equals to 1002, and after that I need to basically create multiple things. So that is title is equals to whatever title that is present in the request. So title is equals to request dot title. Ideally I need to save it to the database, but that's fine. Author is equals to request lo ye author unte ade author kada. So jo bhi author request mein hum log wahi utha rahe. Request dot author. ISBN is equals to, come on, request dot ISBN. Okay, and published underscore date is equals to request dot published underscore date. ఇప్పుడు దీనికి వచ్చిన బాధ ఏంటి? ఓకే, ఇక్కడ సెమీకోలన్ క్లోజ్ చేయలేదు అది, రైట్. Now select all of this, format the document. Yeah. So mostly it is done. So shall I try to run this API? Yeah, for that what is it I need to do? Run add configuration Python debugger, okay, and fast API. Right. So Subramanian, let us try to do one by one, sir. అసలు ఫస్ట్ మనకి ఏపీఐ క్రియేట్ చేయడం వస్తే తర్వాత రీయూజబిలిటీ గురించి ఆలోచిద్దాం. ఓకే, రైట్. సో now ideally I need to give method documentation and all of that stuff, but let me try to run this. Let us try to see if it works or not. Okay sir, so right now it tries to claim that it has started, and by default it runs on 8000 port. So let me go to 8000 port, http://localhost 8000/docs. Did I got an API call? Get books. So what is the response type, sir? If you try to see, the response looks like this. If you try to see, the request looks like this. Now let me try to click on try it out, and then let me try to execute this. Sorry, saying I got we are creating dummy responses. Okay, but I want to create a book. So let me try it out now. Sorry, seeing it has given the basic things. If you try to see if you have given example, it will try to fill that example value in this. ISBN ki manam em ivvale anduke string ani vachindi. In the ISBN also, if I would have given field of and then if I would have given some example, that will be the default response. So let me try to give 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or something like that. And then let me execute. Manam adu goppa code em rayaledu kabatti anni pani chettayi. But are you seeing we are able to basically create a request? But the idea is now I need to take this request, store it to database, so that next time when the user is asking, it is going to give me values from the database. Right now my code doesn't remember anything. It is just a dummy API, where you can make two calls: post and get. Okay, are we clear on this, sir? So tomorrow what we'll try to do is we will try to make this write to a database and a book information books database lo gradam. Okay, to write to the database, generally our common opinion is you should know SQL. Yes, so tomorrow we will be writing to the database without knowing SQL, because we are going to understand about something called as ORM. ORM is object relational mapper. What it means is there is no need for you to know SQL. If you understand basic databases and tabular structure, you can write code and that code will be converted into SQL automatically. That is what we are going to use, because that is what whole world is using. No one is going to write SQL select star from something. Those days are gone. So if I want to get anything, I'll be basically using something called as ORM frameworks. In the world of Java, there is something called as Hibernate. In the world of .NET, there is something called as Entity Framework. In the world of Python, there is something called as SQL Alchemy. So tomorrow we are going to use SQL Alchemy to whatever book structure which you have taken. Let us try to write it to the Postgres database. The best part is you can try to take the same code and make it work for Oracle database also, right? From code, I need not worry about which database I am trying to work with. Okay, we will not be discussing ORMs, sir. We will be using ORMs. Okay, discussing మనం చాలా చేస్తున్నాం, మీరు చేస్తలా. Okay, right, fine then. So we'll be implementing an ORM using something called as SQL Alchemy. If you are interested, before coming to the tomorrow's class, try to look into what SQL Alchemy is and how to try to write an insert query, select query, update query using SQL Alchemy. If you want, you can do that. Okay, right, sir? So do we understand how APIs are working? Now GitHub exposes all of the information by writing some APIs like this. I'm not trying to tell that they will be using fast APIs. They can use anything, because APIs can be developed in any language. Okay, now this is how your developers write microservices. They'll try to write catalog API, so which will be trying to run a Docker container and then scale it individually. Okay, so right, sir? So prastaniki ee code work commit cheddanu. So git today I'll not be having any shell scripting session, sir. You చూడండి చాలు. మళ్ళీ షెల్ స్క్రిప్టింగ్ కూడా అవుతాయి, ఇంకా కొంచెం యాడ్ అవుద్ది. Try to attend the evening Linux session. That is enough. Basic Linux, how to create machines. Continue that. Shell scripting, let us try to do it after we finish Python. Yeah, all right. Because I don't mind speaking another 15-20 minutes, but I'm not sure how much you are practicing Python. I don't know, right? Yeah. All the freshers, I want you to add this library program into your GitHub account and add it to your resume, where you can try to basically tell that while I was learning Python, I have implemented this API. Okay, and in your resume, this GitHub link has to go. Okay, so that you can claim that you know how to build APIs. Okay, That is always gives a good impression. Whenever all the freshers, whatever work which you are trying to practice in the class, try to put in your GitHub account. కావాలంటే ఇంటర్వ్యూకి ఒక కొత్త GitHub అకౌంట్ క్రియేట్ చేయండి. దాంట్లో అన్ని అందంగా రాయండి, డాక్యుమెంటేషన్ అవి పెట్టి. అండ్ ఇఫ్ యూ వాంట్, మీరు సిగ్గు లేకుండా నేను క్లాస్లో రాసి అక్కడ పెట్టేసుకోవచ్చు, నాకేమీ లేదు ఇబ్బంది అందుకు. But try to ensure that whatever you are trying to paste it over here, you project as if you have practiced all of that, as this works out for freshers. Okay, right. Okay, did we at least got a basic idea of how APIs